Hey guys, welcome to our second part of the video. Today we'll be talking about from dating to marriage and how we got there.
Right, so last video we left off of when he asked my dad if we could officially date. So that was my senior year at Cedarville, fall semester, when we started dating. Rest of my senior year we were long distance, so my love languages being physical touch and quality time. That kind of required a lot since like physical touch is not an option and quality time, really FaceTime is the best you've got. So that's what we were dealing with, long distance. And we're just gonna give some tips of like how to go through long distance. So long distance was pretty difficult for me with those two things being my main love languages, and there wasn't really a good way to experience those long distance, but we did what we could.
Long distance was the worst. I wasn't a big fan of long distance because I knew that we would have to talk on the phone or to video chat quite often, and I'm more of the texting type instead of talking on the phone type, so it would have to be a huge adjustment for that.
So something we learned throughout long distance was that communication is really important. In any relationship, communication is important, obviously, but especially long distance, you have to be clear when you're communicating via text, because text and FaceTime are your like only ways of communicating. So if like a text is unclear and then you're mad at the other person, we had to learn to be concise in communicating and clear in communicating, and also expressing ourselves if we feel a certain way. Long distance tests you and how to do that productively.
Another thing we did during long distance was pray. At the end of each night, we decided to pray for one another and for the things around us. So I would do Monday, she'd do Tuesday, and then
every other day.
Alternate days.
For long distance, some nights that would be like an hour phone call, catching up, talking about what's going on in our lives, and then just praying at the end. Some nights it would be a quick call to pray because we were both really busy. And that's kind of what we're talking about that he mentioned before, like long distance is kind of hard for those nights that like we can only get like a quick 10-minute phone call to pray. And that's like the hardest part of long distance, really trying to connect and make time for each other when it doesn't fit into your life schedule as easily.
As she was saying, part of the intentionality is making that time for your partner. And so I knew I had to maybe stop talking to the guys, stop playing the video game, or just cut off what I was doing to make time for a solid 10-15 minutes of a conversation that included prayer.
And probably more of a guy issue is I gotta put down the game for her. So some people can handle talking, well, he's playing the video game, but we being quality time, I need your full attention for that to feel like quality time. So you're wasting our time if you're there on the game.
I do agree, because when I did put down the game, it showed that she mattered more in that moment than me being distracted by two different things. And so I just wanted to show her that she was important. And so the first time we talked about kissing, she was like,
"So, when are we gonna kiss?"
And I said, "No, we're not gonna kiss. I want to kiss the day of our wedding if we get there."
So I was okay with that because me having never kissed a guy, which I had like purposely not done because I was never in a serious relationship before. So I don't want to kiss a boyfriend from now on until I'm like, no, I'm marrying them. So that was our boundary at the beginning of no kissing. So obviously we had to take the precautions to not kiss, because even that might be hard sometimes. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So the next big thing that kind of happened in our relationship, we started dating in November. I went to Chicago for that New Year's over break, and during that time he wrote me a little letter, like a Happy New Year's letter. In that he said, "I love you." That was basically our first time telling each other I love you, which was honestly pretty quick. That was only like 4 or 5 months into knowing each other, but things have been going really well and we kind of knew it already. And we really talked about like, what does it mean when you say I love you? So Joseph can explain that a little.
So when I wrote I love you in that letter, I was thinking about the cross and what it means. Jesus Christ died for us because he loves us. Christ's death was the ultimate sacrifice. And so when I said I love you to Rachel, it meant I was willing to do anything for you, unless it went against God or the Bible.
That kind of changed my perspective on love too, because I had kind of been like having a fantasy mindset of love, but really after his letter talking about that really helped me be more secure in a relationship, because I was really like anxious about a relationship and like, what if this doesn't work out? So knowing that like that type of love is what we're entering into this with, it made me be more at peace and not just like, oh, it's a feeling, because I had been living off like it was a feeling.
It is important to note that love is not an emotion. It is an everyday action. You're committed to your partner. You're willing to do anything for them, for their benefit.
For your personal self-sacrifices, right? At your own expense. So the next big step in our relationship, March, was when his brother passed away. So that was a really hard time for him specifically, and like me as his girlfriend trying to support him through that. Thankfully I got to come here and like be with him for like 3 days during that. But even though it was a difficult time for him to go through and for me to support him through, it was really a telling time in our relationship, because through that I got to see his character. Through really hard times like that, the bad things might come out more. But for him, I really saw him stepping up and being a leader for his family and being mature when other people may not have been as mature, and just dealing with that hard circumstance and just being really strong. So I really admired his character through that time, even though it was really difficult for him.
So when my brother died, I wasn't feeling any sort of negative energy towards the Lord. Instead, I thought in my head, this would be a nice opportunity for me to demonstrate and talk about God to my family. So when you get into a relationship, a lot of gunk is going to come out. A lot of your family trauma is going to come out. A lot of childhood trauma.
Anytime you're going to be in conflict, it's probably going to stem back to those traumas or anything else from your past. So in a relationship, you need to talk about those things. You need to be willing to go deeper when there's conflict, when you're disagreeing on something. There's always something deeper. So it's probably going to be one of those things from your past. You need to be willing to dig down into those things and talk about them with your partner, because that's how you're going to avoid conflict in the future, by having those conversations about why I do the things the way I do, why I feel this way about certain things, because this happened in my past. So that's really going to grow your relationship, grow you guys closer together, because you're being more vulnerable, and help you not get in conflict over the same things over and over because you dealt with the root issue.
There was a conversation about what she'd do after graduation. It was between two options. It was Chicago or New York. So a few months before she made the decision, we started to pray about it. We were asking God what his will was for Rachel. And ultimately, she decided to go to Chicago, and that was a big step for her because
I didn't know anyone here except like a few ICI people, but I wasn't close to them, and I had like my aunt and cousins in the suburbs, but that was it. So it was really kind of like a big move, starting my career here. And it also meant that if I'm bringing my life here, starting my career here, like we're serious, we're probably gonna get married soon. So that was like a big move mentally, emotionally, and for my career as well, being a teacher. But ultimately we felt like God was leading me to make the decision to get a job in Chicago, which I did. And that just really confirmed like our relationship and us moving forward. As Joseph always said, God talks through three means.
He talks through circumstances, he talks through people, and he talks through his word to us.
So that was God really talking to me through his word, praying and being in the word, and through the circumstances of giving me an interview and giving me the job through that interview. So then I moved here at the beginning of August.
So I was in my senior year, and she was in her first year of teaching. And so it was hard for us to see each other often because I was really busy with school, with work, and with ministry on the weekends. So the best availability that we had was one day, which was Saturday. And so I made Saturday our time to spend time together. Whether it was hanging out at Moody, going to a restaurant, going to a coffee shop, or going to her house to watch a movie, make food, or whatever.
So with that last comment he made, another boundary we had was not being at my apartment alone. As long as my roommate's there, we could be at my apartment, just to give ourselves some more protection on like physical boundaries and not be tempted. And even if we were tempted, someone else is there, so you're probably not going to do anything.
So after Rachel had been there for about a month or two, I had more of a comfortable feeling of actually marrying Rachel. And so I got an idea of proposing to her. And so basically I wanted to propose to her in December.
He was on vacation from college and I was on winter break for school. So boom, December comes. I go home for like 2 days before Christmas to go home for Christmas. And I'm there with my family. We have pizza at my grandma's house, and like we do every year, we go to see big Christmas lights. It's kind of like the zoo lights that are here in Chicago, except I was in New York at home. So we go to see these Christmas lights. Whole family's there, walking in. Cool. Guess who pops out from behind a tree?
So I started planning this proposal in November and executed it in December. And it took a lot of careful planning. I needed to coordinate with her sister on where Rachel would be at that time. I'd written a fake email from my boss, and I showed it to Rachel, and it was basically my schedule for that December. And so I wanted to make sure that Rachel would not suspect me ever being in New York at that time. And so December 22nd, I put down a specific time slot that I was working. But during that time, I was traveling to New York and I was hiding out in her aunt's house.
Yeah, he lied about like having to work that day. You know, I'm sick. An hour before we were texting and he's like, yeah, I'm sick. And I left work early. But then boom, he proposed. After being engaged, after December, our relationship, we had to put even more strict boundaries because once you see marriage in sight, it gets way more difficult to resist temptation. For a month, we couldn't even be in my apartment, even though my roommate was there. That wasn't an option for us. So we would only hang out in public places, coffee shops, restaurants, or at his college. And yeah, that was kind of hard emotionally during that time, like, because we couldn't really connect. It didn't feel intimate. But honestly, in the end, it was for the better of our relationship.
So for the wedding planning part, I let Rachel take over. Honestly, I didn't care how we did it as long as she was happy with the product and I could just buy whatever that she needed me to buy.
I was teaching and like it was my first year of teaching, which was pretty stressful. I kind of wanted and needed his help, although he was like working on stuff to be about to graduate. So he was busy too. We kind of did share a lot of the responsibilities, although I was like brainstorming and finding things. I would like send him links like, oh, what do you think about this? Okay, can you buy this? So we really tag teaming a lot of the tasks for the wedding. We used the knot.com, which helped us have our wedding website, get RSVPs and invites, which we did digitally. We weren't going to spend time wasting mail.
And money.
And money on stamps. And they also, on the knot, have a checklist of like wedding to-do things, so it helped me, the like type A organizer, stay organized and on track and not being anxious about all these things because it gave us a timeline of here are the tasks you need to do when. So it was really helpful for wedding planning.
There were some tense moments, but at the end of the day, she got her way most of the time. And if you're ever wedding planning, the stuff that you do argue about is not going to matter 2 or 3 months from now because the wedding will be done. It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great day, and honestly, we remembered a lot of it, but those little details don't matter at the end of the day.
So before we got married, we decided to do premarital counseling. And it's helpful for a couple of reasons. It's helpful because we can talk about certain traumas that we've had and how it can actually come into the relationship and how to deal with that. And you can talk about certain conflict resolution techniques that you can work through with your partner. I'm more of the get away kind of guy, while she's more of the pursue the conflict sort of person.
Yeah. Other important things we learned from premarital counseling was like the biblical perspective of a lot of things that happen within marriage, like biblical role of a man versus woman, husband versus wife, biblical view of sex and like what it is, why, what does the Bible say about it. And that was really helpful just to set us on the right track going into marriage, that we didn't have these false, unrealistic expectations because we got them from what God said about it. That was really helpful.
And so in premarital counseling, our mentor told us to have a date before the day of the wedding. It was helpful for us to have that date because Rachel has a lot of high anxiety. She has a very controlling attitude sometimes, and so we had trusted a couple of people to set up the reception and to set up the ceremony. So by going on this date, it allowed us to relax and have a good time eating food and just being excited for the day of the wedding.
Alright, so that was our story part 2, dating to marriage. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if there are any other videos you want to see. We'd be happy to make those. And that's it for today.